A prophet's heart and cause are never a ghetto. It's a line from Nikos Kakasak. It says, the bosom of God is not a ghetto, but the heart of man often is. You know, the word Catholic, the word Catholic is not the opposite of Protestant. The word Catholic, there's Catholics and Protestants. Protestants can also be Catholics, and Catholics can be un-Catholic. The word Catholic means universal. The word Catholic means you're universal. You're wide, wide, wide. And my favorite definition of Catholic comes from Jesus in John 14, where Jesus says, in my Father's house there are many rooms. He's not talking about geography in heaven. He's talking about God's heart. See, so God's heart is many rooms. And the opposite of that, the opposite of God's heart is a fundamentalist's heart. See, a fundamentalist's heart has one room. Now, it's interesting. It's a good room. It's always a really good room, but then everything, that room becomes a prism through which all of life is seen, and it's interesting. If I say something I hope is not cruel or unfair, oftentimes when we get deeply involved in justice, that is really a danger, where this cause becomes everything. Everything is about this cause. I have some very close friends who are really deeply committed, and they're fundamentalists. You can be a fundamentalist about anything. So you're always watching. You always have that eye out, And it's interesting, ironically, too. Sometimes, and they're prophets of sensitivity, which makes them the most insensitive person in the entire room, Someone sneezes wrong and they're on them like a pit bull, all in the name of sensitivity and so on. That's why there's so much, reaction to political correctness. Oftentimes, the cause is correct. The people saying it are fundamentalists. You just sneeze wrong and you're dead, And even though what they're saying is right, I'm trying to avoid that in my own life, but I live with it all the time, from deeply committed people. It's kind of, say, whether it's the ecology, whether it's racism or whatever, it's only one issue. It's a good issue. It's a correct issue. Or on the right, it's a question of dogma. Dogma, is this dogmatically correct? It doesn't matter whether it's meaningful or it helps people. Is it dogmatically correct? And so on. See, it's a good room, but it's fundamentalism. Incidentally, our bishop at home tells his joke. He says, what's the difference? You've heard the difference between a liturgist and a terrorist, but what's the difference between a liturgist and a dogmatic theologian? He said, well, dogmatic theologians argue about how many people are inside the Trinity, and liturgists don't care as long as they're vested properly and standing at the right place. Okay. See, and really, where we also often struggle, and that is we make God our tribal deity. You want to read the second last book that Marilyn Robinson, the novelist, Marilyn Robinson, the novelist, who wrote Gilead and so on, she's first and foremost a deep theological writer. Okay, she's probably the best commentator on Calvinism that exists today. She's a Calvinist, But read her book called When I Was a Child, I Read Books. Okay, but she has some powerful essays in there which should challenge us as Americans. So on, are we making God a tribal God? It's our God, and just read it. It's really, really challenging. That is so easy to do, and not just in terms of civic religion. Religions do it. I grew up I grew up in a very good Roman Catholic milieu, but God was Roman Catholic. God was a tribal God, or or some churches, God is our God, and the other people, you're kind of relating to him too, but he's ours, See, that's idolatry. That's idolatry, That's not Catholic. But when I grew up, God was a Roman Catholic, and other people, they maybe can get in, but they're going to have to become Roman Catholic, See, you turn God into a tribal deity. He's ours. Or we put him self-interest, where we link God to certain forms of self-interest, to certain forms of ideology and so on. It's tribalism. It's tribalism. It needs to be named that, And prophecy can easily fall into that. Again, where you're falling into an ideology, you're falling into some kind of tribalism and so on. That's not Catholic. That's not God. In my Father's house, there are many rooms. In good prophecy, there's more than just one room.